Okay, what we're going to have here, as you can see, we've got a window that you can type questions into, answers, anything can happen. There is another person out here for sure, Natalie or Paul, whichever it is, and I'm sure that they can hear or see as well. I also know that this is being recorded, and because I have two people that I know cannot make it already, and so we will also archive this so that you can check it out any other time you would like and view it in multiple series. This is the second in our series from the Hinterland Who's Who. We'll be running one in English every other month, so you can join in any time. The other scenario behind it is we do run a series of webinars on other topics. For example, next Tuesday we will be having one from the 10-tree gentleman out of Regina about the value of trees. On Wednesday of next week, we'll have Eric Pittman from Victoria doing the first of two parts on the hummingbird, the rufous hummingbird as a matter of fact. And if everything starts going correctly, we will have some creation stories, some First Nations, as well as we have a row taking place down the Columbia River and all the sights and scenes around the Columbia River where we'll be doing 3 or 4 webinars from there as well. So just to give you a heads up, there's lots on the go. You can check our education calendar at CWF and it'll pop up and give you the idea of what's happening around. All webinars will be listed as a black scenario on the picture. Just a quick little heads up before we get going. So of course people start to wonder and they say the orca, believe it or not, I've had people ask me, orca? What's an orca? Because most people know it by their other name, the killer whale, and as you can see its Latin name, Orcinus orca, is where we get the idea of the word orca for the whale. And as we keep going, we're going to discover it's not really a whale either. I'm Randy McLeod. I'm the Education Manager with the Canadian Wildlife Federation, and we're going off on a little adventure. So if you have questions at any time, please feel free to ask. We'll go through and keep on rolling. I've got some video in the end we can show, and there's so many details, it's hard to put it all together in a small 20 to 30 minute window. So of course, those of you in Vancouver, you see them on a regular basis as they wander around, jumping, leaping, or in most cases, sitting in a pod. And in case you're wondering, yes, that is a nice pod. There is a male, a female, and a baby in there. If you take a look at it, and we'll be able to identify which one of those was which in just a few seconds. So when we start looking at the orca, or the killer whale, there are actually more than one type. There are actually 4 types, and now they think there is a 5th type of orca that is available. As you can start to look at them in the 4 pictures, you will start to see that type B is a little different. Type B is not the nice white color, it's a yellowy color. Type A, small, very dark black, but when you look at type C, smaller white patch by the eye, not quite as bright in color. And D, again, the smaller patch and the gray at the back. We're familiar with the orca being a black and white situation. They are all black and white, it's just versions of white that we're working with. Prime example, type B, the white that's there is closer to actually what a polar bear is, that nice little yellowy color. So again, things to think about as we start working. So what is an orca? What does it look like? The average orca, and again the word average is used very sparingly here because research is still highly underway with the orca in all parts, and so these are approximations right now. So they're approximately 6 to 8 meters long. Okay, if you're taking a look at this, what does that mean? Well, they're about the average length of a school bus, those nice big yellow school buses that you see. 4 to 5 tones, that means we're in excess of a lot of weight. They do have a black and white color, but the black may be a shade closer to gray, and the white, as you notice here, the white may be closer to a yellowy color. So again, they are all there, but they're all deemed shades of white and black. They are long with a rounded body, and that's where the long body comes into play. Now, if you notice back in the very first shot, I said we'd be able to tell They have a large dorsal fin. The dorsal fin is the one that fits straight up the back, and the males stick straight up. And the straight up one could be 1.8 meters. So they're very, very large. Or in other words, this is roughly the height that a lot of high jumpers jump at in high school, if you can believe that. Females and the young, whether it's a female or a male, the fin has a curve to it and is smaller, maybe a meter high at the most, but usually a lot smaller than that. So there's how we can start to identify from our picture right here who is who. So we can see right here a very large dorsal fin. Likewise over here, these two would be males. This one here, you notice, has a curvature to it, and therefore is a female. And of course, we see a little baby down here in the bottom corner. Whoops, pardon me, going the wrong direction. All right, next, this is where we're looking at from what an average orca will look like. And again, when you start looking at it, this will be the same everywhere. A white bottom and a black top. Now, why does the orca have a white bottom under it? The white bottom is for camouflage. So when it's swimming on the top of the water, any animals below it will look up and it will blend actually in with the sky. The dark cover, when they dive, because they're now under the water, the dark resembles the bottom. Again, beautiful camouflaging. So there is the dorsal fin we talked about, which is the easiest way to identify male and female. The saddle is that little white spot that comes in behind the dorsal fin. And this is now where, when you start looking at it, even in this picture, whitish on the bottom is much darker or brighter than the white in the saddle. Quite common. Again, that color can switch all the time. Fluke at the back, pectorals, and just giving you an idea. If you notice the small rounded head at the front, and there's an eye spot, the eye is located usually right around the eye spot. That's why it's situated there. Here is an eye here, and there is the ear just in behind. So this is a very key point when they start identifying them, because they start to identify the orca by its detail, and this is how they know which one is which, and so they can keep track of them easier. Orcas communicate. Oh my goodness, they are some of the noisiest animals in the water, and because they're so noisy, people have trouble identifying. But the communications is done through a series of complex whistles. Now, of course, we know they're not whistling through their lips. They whistle through the blowhole in that. They do squeaks from their mouth. They do clicking sounds and whines. So becoming very, very complicated in their communications. But, you know, the interesting part about all this, every pod or every orca can identify each other by these sounds. And the closer, as we refer to them, the dialects are, the closer the dialects are, the closer the pods and the animals are related to each other. So if there's a mother who heads off on her own with a baby, or a male that heads off on its own, it may start to develop its own form of clicking or squeaks, and again, a dialect. And so once they do that, they want to differentiate for their pod. So this is why it starts to happen. So very, very intelligent animals on being able to figure this out. There's a small air-filled nasal sac just below the blowhole. This is where a lot of the sound is made from and continues to go for. Now the orca, yes, they are meat eaters, and so they have teeth. And most teeth are about 45. Not sure how many teeth a full-grown adult male would have, or female in the human race. I wonder if it's close, something to think about. Each tooth measures 3 inches, or about 7.6 centimeters. When you think about that, this is approximately 1 inch. So if I extend this, this finger is approximately the length of a tooth. Now, much larger than humans have. They are shaped in such a way for ripping and tearing because orcas don't chew food. They're very similar to a lot of marine mammals where the food goes in whole, The digestive system then takes care of everything that it needs to, and once it's finished, there will be debris that will be discarded, but again, it's after all the nutrients have been removed. So now why do I need teeth if I don't chew? Well, that will come from the fact that orcas are extremely wide versed in what they eat. So they will eat small prey like fish, squid, little tiny sea turtles, birds, whatever they can get a hold of. And so these are very small, even though when you think of a river otter, it's not that small. But in comparison to the orca, it is a very small animal and can be swallowed whole. Very similar to what a snake would do. Now, let's suppose we go after our large prey, because orcas are meat eaters and will eat anything and everything in its sight. So it will eat dolphins, even though the orca is a member of the dolphin family, not the whales. It is a dolphin. It will eat other dolphins because they're smaller, but they're large. They will eat whales, believe it or not, or eat parts of whales. So the teeth are used to rip a piece of meat away, very similar to our lions and things like that in Africa, where they rip and tear, and then they start to eat. Or like the crocodiles, rip and tear, and then they swallow it. So quite often you will find whales that have a piece of meat, literally a piece of their flesh removed. That is because they have probably run into an orca somewhere along the line, and the orca has then turned and taken a bite, sort of like an appetizer, but again, swallows it whole. If they had their preference, they would love fish. Fish is their all-time favorite. Now, how do they go about doing this? They work under what's called echolocation, very similar again now to bats. As bats fly, they send out the sounds then bounce back. The bounce back of the sound will dictate how large the sound is, how long the sound is, the depth of the sound, the high pitchedness of the sound, all bounce back, and it actually helps them migrate to find food and to navigate their way through the waters. So I send out my little echo, it bounces back. If it comes back very short and sharp, it's probably a small fish. If I send it out and it comes back long and with a little bit of a down low sound, that means it's probably a larger animal that they will eat anyways. So what they're doing is building a very accurate picture of their surroundings. If it bounces back off a rock, well, of course, a rock doesn't have the same density. And since it doesn't have the same density or thickness or things that move through it, all of a sudden they're going to be able to tell, oh, that's a rock, or this is murky water, or whatever. So an incredible way of them working their way through the navigation system and to find food that they're looking for. Now, where are orcas found? The map I know looks a little blurry, but it is a map of the world. As you can see, orcas are found everywhere. There isn't a place on the earth that the orca is not found. You can see down at the bottom, they live in the Antarctic. In the north, they live in the Arctic. They live everywhere. But if you really take a good look at the map, what you're seeing are the cold water areas of the world. These are the areas where the coldest or the coolest water is. Orcas love cool water. They're slow, they're methodical, they like to stay cool. So that's why you'll see them more in the colder waters like the Arctic and the Antarctic. The Antarctic, by the way, they never thought they lived there, but they have been discovered. They live in pods or family groups, and these run anywhere 5 to 30, 10 to 40. The number in a pod varies, but not too often does it get past that 40 to 50 number, because once you get there, the food source. You know, it's a little harder to find food for 50 people. You know, being in a household, think about the amount of food we have to produce for a family of, say, 7 as opposed to a family of 3. We need more food for the larger families. The pod is always led by the female. Now, that could be a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, whichever. But the reigning maternalistic oldest living female in the pod is the one who will lead the pod. And they live with their mothers almost all their lives. So you never leave. So it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl, you're living with your mother all the time. Seems to be I would have my bedrooms full in my house all the time. My children would never leave home. This is the scenario that happens here. The kids just don't like to leave home too often. But what happens is, as the pods become too large, then they start to break apart for food and navigation. So that's why we do get pods all over the place. Now, part of breeding, part of the orca is their ability to reproduce. So, in order to reproduce, the female orca, not until she's about 15 years of age, will produce her first calf. Now, that is the first. But then after that, about every 5 years, they have another calf. So, think about how few are born. So if the orca lives to be 50 years old, 15 years it starts, they might have 6 children, maybe 7 at the most. So now we start to understand why the orca could be a species at risk and why the population dwindles as we start or as they start being captured for captivity or if they're killed. They say the life expectancy is 30 years for males, 50 years for females. But just the other day, they discovered a female and they have averaged her age to be 103. So it's not uncommon to find 80 to 100-year-old orcas. Will they get much larger? No, they still seem to stay within that 3 to 5, 4 to 6 meter range. But do they get heavier? Yes, they become larger in girth, bigger around. So we have a low birth rate. So a pod, if it starts with 4 orcas in it, it may take 10 years for that pod to get to 6. But unfortunately, they have a huge mortality rate. And in most cases, the young die off within 6 months. 50% of them will die for whatever reasons within the first 6 months of life. So now we start looking at it. I've started with a pod of 4. I've had 2 new calves. I should be at 6. But 50% pass away, so now I'm down to 5. 5 years later, I may get that 6th one back. So again, you can see very slow growth in the pods. And they've estimated somewhere in the world 50,000 or more. But again, these are approximations based upon the fact that they're just now discovering the orca in multiple locations around the world. So what have we got here? We've got mother and child living together all the time. Now, will that child ever leave her? No, stays with her. If the young one dies, perishes, or whatever, that's the only time things start to happen. So what have we got about the orca? The orca is the top predator in the ocean. Most of us might think it's the shark. Nope. Actually, the orca, being a dolphin, will actually attack sharks and has a very good record. We don't know why the mortality rate is so high. No, we don't. That's the other problem we've got. Is the mortality based upon the fact that the young has not been able to adapt to the cold water? Have they been eaten by other prey? Because remember, the young orca is small and so therefore can become prey to other animals. Is there infection that could happen? Yes, that can happen as well. But part of the orca's hunting strategy is to swim close to shore. By swimming close to shore and isolating their prey in a small area, what happens is the young become part of that. The young may not be able to get themselves back into the water properly or how to navigate through there because the mother doesn't always catch food like we see with birds and that and then bring it back to a nest. The young has to learn how to eat as well. So mortality is very high. Maybe they can't keep up to we'll call it a migration, as the whales move from one place to the next, and they may not be able to keep up. Unfortunately, as children ourselves, our parents would always say, come on, catch up. They'd wait for us to do that. In the animal kingdom, not too often because the the adult doesn't want to become prey for somebody else. And so in a case like that, the young ones can be left behind, they don't move, and so there's lots and lots of reasons. Another one may be, since they do like the colder areas, some orcas, and I have a video of this in a second, get trapped in ice floes. Because the young are unable to move as quickly and as far on a breath of air, all of a sudden we do have a piece of mortality or a death rate again. Okay, so just giving us some ideas around this. They are the largest member of the dolphin family. They can go pretty fast, and I believe that should say, well, it is kilometers per hour or 35. In other words, when you're driving around town in Vancouver or Toronto, the speed limit posted is 50. So these animals swim at the speed of a car within the city limits. Okay. They tend to concentrate in the colder areas, which is interesting because where are some of the greatest sightings? They're in the Pacific off the Vancouver coast, California, Washington, and Oregon, where that water appears to be warmer, but it's actually not as warm as we think it is until the El Nino effect comes in and pushes the warmer water in. Pods have different sounds. They're air-breathing mammals. Since they are air-breathing, they must come to the surface to breathe air. So now let's think of our young one again. If I'm in a scenario and there's a large pod, I may not be able to get to the surface to breathe. They can hold their breath for about 20 minutes and able to swim about a mile. That's as far as they can go between coming to the surface and breathing. So now think about it. Why would they live in the Antarctic and the Arctic where all that ice is? Very interesting scenario that they are under research right now. And there could be as many as 4 generations living in the pod. Now, I mentioned a few other things. In a little over a month, Arctic killer whales, think about this, swim from the Arctic up into the waters off of South America. Now, this has just been discovered that what they're actually doing is taking a vacation, but in the vacation, they're actually shedding old skin. Very similar to the way a snake grows, it sheds skin. So they shed the skin off and then make the trip back. It's about a 40-day trip from the Antarctic, these whales, which has just been discovered. And so they make the trip. Now, why would they go up there? Well, obviously, the scenario is, I don't know about you, but if you get a cut or take your glove off outside in wintertime, it gets cold. So if I shed my skin in the dead of winter down in the Arctic, the skin, I'm going to become extremely cold there, another possibility for death. So what this allows them to do is go up, and as they gradually come back down, it gives them a chance to now have the skin adjust or become acclimatized. So now with this in mind, I've got a couple of little videos we're going to see. One of them just happened just a little while ago, and we'll go from there.
Development tonight for those 11 desperate orcas, killer whales. We all watched that video of them today, trapped by the ice, forced to breathe through the small hole. Well, tonight, nature has given them a path, but it is a long way out. ABC's Neil Karlinski tells us about their dramatic attempt to escape.
They are a family fighting for survival, taking turns to breathe, doing what's called spy hopping, literally peeking out above the waterline, desperately looking for an escape route. This pod of killer whales was trapped in the ice of Canada's Hudson Bay by a cruel turn in the weather. Temperatures in the bay had been unusually warm, luring the family in search of food. But as the temperature dropped, the bay iced over. There was no way out. With only one hold to share for those precious breaths, they were running out of time.
With no real escape route from Hudson Bay, they just move from one little breathing area to the next.
A killer whale can go about 20 minutes at the absolute maximum on one breath, swimming little more than a mile before needing air. The nearest opening in the ice, an impossible 6 miles. Several dramatic rescues were considered, but abandoned. Canada's ice-breaking ship was days away from clearing a path, but experts feared the noise would frighten the whales. They could have tried to use a Chinook helicopter to airlift them. Too costly, too time-consuming. Then today, before anything could be done, they were gone. The winds shifted the ice, creating gaps, air pockets.
The killer whale is the social predator of the marine environment. They have they have the biggest brain to body weight ratio. They have the best sonar and vision. These guys are no dummies.
Orcas are led by the females, who live up to 80 years. In this case, it's believed the grandmother found an opening and led them out. It will be up to her to keep them alive, navigating a patchwork of ice for hundreds of miles in search of the open sea. Neil Karlinski, ABC News, Seattle.
So as you can see, extremely smart animals as they keep rolling and doing their things. Thanks, Tina, for letting me know about my microphone. Totally forgot. I have another one here coming. This one is from the Antarctic. Again, we won't spend the whole time with it. We will just have a very quick look just so we can start to see what's happening. Because as they start to work, I might be seeing it, I might not be seeing it today. Oh, there we go. We'll see how long it takes for this one to come in, because this is about tagging the whales, and you can see how close people can actually get to them if and when it starts to roll for me.
Location.
If you notice the very small dorsal fin there, this is a female, and again, part of the characteristics of the Arctic orca. If you also notice in that whale that's just going up and down, that the white is not white, it is that offset, it's that shaded piece now. Again, illustration of the type that it would be. Can continue and continue, but if you notice, there's a wonderful little penguin sitting back there in the ice floe, just having a good time as well. So, having said that, and going from there, that is roughly what we were looking at for our presentation today. So, going through, and just so we can help you again, I will go back to here, which is where we left off. And those were the two articles that I had listed. The first one about the Hudson Bay, and then the one about the Arctic. Again, they are full visuals that can be looked at. We did see the first one in full. The second one you saw was almost 12 minutes. I went about a minute or two. So where we're at right now is I'm Randy McLeod, the Education Manager. This is how I can be contacted. Also, Annie Langlois is the Hinterland Who's Who person, who is in charge of all of that, and that's where she can be reached at as well. So just giving you some contact details which can be forwarded at any given time. And the next thing up, having done this, the next one up we're going to do, and this will be English because October is the month we will be doing the orca whale in French, so you could feel free to view in on that one as well if you would like. And what we're going to look at next month, meaning November, will be the wolverine. And again, great series, great things that are going on. And all of these webinars that we do will be archived, and they're archived so that you can view them at any given time. So With that in mind, if there are no further questions, it's been a pleasure having you with me. This is roughly, Tina, what you can see as our time frame. I try and work within the 20 minutes to half an hour maximum. That way they're allowing everybody's day to move on. And when we get into the formal school situation, 30 minutes is pretty much the average time for a period or what would happen within the range. So it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you for your feedback. There is information all over. You notice in the bottom left, I put down Hinterland Who's Who. They have some great fact sheets and things out there around the killer whale or the orca, as well as everything we'll be talking about. So thank you very much. Been a pleasure having you. Please join in anytime and you can check our calendar. Glad you can't wait. And again, if you want to check a few things out, you can go to our CWF education calendar, and that education calendar will pop up with a monthly view of everything that's going on. So have a great day. Hopefully your weather in Vancouver is a little nicer. Ours is cloudy. I live in Kimberley, British Columbia. Ours is cloudy and a little cool today. So have a great day. We'll chat with you later. Bye.